in place for flexible spending account because as you contribute to these accounts, the contribution is on a pre-tax basis. Now, these accounts are considered a use it or lose it account. Now, there is one exception. On the healthcare flexible spending account, you can roll over up to $550. That is in place today if you're on an flexible spending account, and it will be in play for next year as well. Once you make your decision regarding the amount you want to contribute to either of these plans, you cannot change it unless you experience a qualifying event. Those are the events that I've talked about earlier. So you want to be really conservative and make sure that as you're electing to contribute to these accounts that you really are able to spend down the amount. You do not want to have to forfeit money at the end of the plan year. Let me talk more about that. The first plan is the Healthcare Flexible Spending Account. The annual maximum that you can elect to contribute is $2,750. Again, it's on a pre-tax basis. You have to use the funds for pre-approved medical, pharmacy, dental, or vision expenses. The good thing for the Healthcare Flexible Spending Account is if you elect $1,000, for example, to contribute, that full amount is available to you on January 1st. So let's say you have knee surgery the end of January, you can use the full $1,000 to go towards your deductible. Now, of course, if you spend those funds early, you will still have payroll deduction for that amount until you have met your contribution obligation. Some examples of how you can spend money in your healthcare flexible spending account. You can see for medical copays, pharmacy copays. Hearing aids are never covered 100%, so this could be something. You can use it to offset vision services, even if you have vision coverage. A big one is orthodontics for children. If you have a child in braces, for example, even if you have dental coverage, the full amount of those braces is not covered 100%. So you can put funds in your healthcare flexible spending account on a pre-tax basis to pay that monthly orthodontic bill that you have to pay anyway. The big thing is if you see at the bottom in red, this is in place today and it's in place for next year. You can go to the pharmacy and get over-the-counter medications using your flexible spending account. So if you're sitting there right now, we're in November, and you have $1,000 just sitting in your flexible spending account, you can go to the pharmacy and buy things like cough syrup, cough drops, ibuprofen, Tylenol, your allergy medication, Band-Aids, hand sanitizer, Clorox wipes, things of that nature are covered that you can use your flexible spending account. Because again, if you're sitting there today with $1,000 still in your healthcare flexible spending account, come December 31st, $550 can roll over to be used next year, but the remaining $450 is forfeited. So you do not want to lose any of your money that you have contributed. So make sure that you have plans to go and spend it down. The other account is the Dependent Care Flexible Spending Account. This account allows you to put up to $5,000 per year into the account. Now, this account does not allow a rollover, so it's strictly use it or lose it, no rollover feature. The other thing is that you do not get the full amount you allocate on day one. Only the amount that you have payroll deducted is available for you to use to pay for dependent care. Now, I've raised 4 children and worked full-time the whole time. So I use Dependent Care FSA every single year. It saved me money because, again, it's on a pre-tax basis and you're paying for something that you have to pay for anyway. Now, you can use this Dependent Care Flexible Spending Account for daycare and preschool children to the age of 13, adult daycare. Perhaps you help to take care of your parents and you need someone to assist to care for them while you're working. This is for before and after school programs and or summer camps. As we transition to United Healthcare, again, many of you are probably familiar with this already, but I want to encourage you as the plan year starts to go to myuhc.com to register. By registering, you have access to a lot of different information. You can look up your benefits, find a doctor, you can manage your claims, look up prescriptions, view your account balances to see how close you are to deductible or out of pocket, estimate your healthcare costs. So again, a lot of different things are available to you on this site. United Healthcare also offers a mobile app called Health for Me. You can go to the App Store or Google Play and download this app for free. You can choose from amwell.com or doctorondemand.com. But through either of these, sorry, I got sidetracked a minute. These are where you can go and obtain your virtual visit. So you've got a mobile app that's available. You can see that you can download the information. This is also where virtual visits that you're able to go and click to get virtual visits. You can have your ID card loaded on this. It's just very convenient for you to have everything right there on your smartphone or any other smart device. Here's more information on the virtual visits. Again, I've talked a lot about this, but my biggest advice is that make sure that you're set up to use the virtual visits. Don't wait until you're feeling miserable and then trying to figure out downloading for virtual visits. You want to make sure that you've got it all set up so when you wake up or you get home from work, you're not feeling well, you can just dial right into virtual visits. This is the tool that I talk about every year. That's my favorite, and I always give the same example, but it gives you an idea of how this works. As you are asked to get any type of procedure, whether it's an MRI, CAT scan, blood work, remember that if you go to a hospital facility, it's going to cost you. Sure why that keeps muting out like that, but so for me, I had to get an MRI. Remember me talking about my doctor's office is in the same parking lot as the hospital.
Hey, you guys, welcome. Some changes with the healthcare. I don't know how many of you buy it, but that's some of the stuff that Central provides. Starting out with, this is the chart that's in your book about Child Protective Service investigations and how they investigate. And I also did find a proper videos. This is a lot of times what social workers are kind of accused of, being only CPS workers and taking their children. But this was a case where one of the children was taken and kind of where they are right now. So here is, we'll start off with that. Finishing chapter 13. How's it going? What do you want to present today? Oh, that's right. Okay. This is about Child Protective Services. This was a video I had found about Child Protective Services and like their follow-up.
the father made tremendous progress, and I'm very glad that the child is finally returning home after 5 years. Previously, when we told the child that she had to meet with her mother, she would throw tantrum, she would scream, and she would refuse to meet with her mother. So we were quite concerned that they were not able to spend enough time together to build the relationship. I think mom's progress was something out of expectation. In the past year, the mom made some improvement in terms of interacting with younger children, and that helped build a relationship with the child. It was possible because there were many professionals involved, as well as the presence of other safe adults to help provide support to build a relationship between the mother and child.
So this is in China, but very similar to like what we do in even Cincinnati with foster care. If the kids are moved, and having professionals to kind of train mom how to be a safe mother and then get the kid back is kind of the deal there. They're bleeping out her name to keep it confidential. So it sounds like they're cussing, but they're actually just keeping the daughters.
The case was referred to CPS. One of the boys has sustained an injury with inconsistent accounts provided by caregivers. There were also concerns over the boy's exposure to family So in the last series, we ended off with the mother being pregnant with her third child. Okay, what is the
Hello.
With the birth of the third child, her daughter, there were new stresses that the family had to face, such as the care and preparation of the newborn. But along with that stressor, we also noted that the family made some improvements. For example, securing stable housing and employment, which also reduced the occurrence of families conflict at home. So with that, Child Protection made the intentional decision to have the child, the youngest child, reside at home under parents' care with a safety.
就好像他说衣服要折，我就会折给他，就是他讲说我不做什么给他，就是因为我老公跟清洁工，所以就跟他就是帮忙家里的抹地的扫地，还有洗衣服这些。
So we'll continue to monitor the parents' care of the daughter, but thus far we've been assured of her care, mostly because her medical appointments have been attended to, her immunizations are up to date, and no significant concerns were raised. It's a whole suite of factors that allow the family to improve through their current circumstances. A lot of slow guidance from the social workers, a lot of support from our child protection officer, our officers and our social workers would visit the home and help them on site with tidying the home environment, for example, and readying the room for the newborn. The return to parents' care isn't just determined by parents' readiness, but also the child's readiness. They have several behaviors that they're exhibiting now, such as the emotional dysregulation, the meltdowns, and the screaming and the yelling that can occur and be a stressor for the parents. So what we're working on would also be to equip parents with an understanding of the children's needs and with resources and techniques to manage them safely. We really don't want to set the family up for failure.
So a lot of times with CPS, they're really trying to get family reunification. So we'll see the chart from our book, the chapter 13 next, but they really want the families reunited. And this is even internationally too. We do the same in America, but this was the most concise video. There's a lot longer one about CPS that may be a little better, but it's about 40 minutes. So I just wanted to do this 9-minute clip.
A long time and a lot of resources invested in this family. We believe that it is worth it because of the principle that we strongly believe in, that children should be with their natural families for as long as there is safety.
其实我那次有看你们所拍摄的那个 video 那个戏，
今天其实主要想要跟你谈一下，是小儿子的事情啦。最近就是这样家庭在跟我们说啦，就是孩子现在在家里的时候，他有时不开心的时候，还是发脾气的时候，他会说一些不是很适当的话。OK， 所以可能包括 I will kill you， I will hit you， 然后还有讲过 I will jump down。OK。
就是小的孩子突然讲这样的话，有点惊讶。
就是有
So what they're kind of trying to say is that like he didn't just like learn how to say that without mom saying it out of the blue. Like I will kill you and I will jump off this 12th story and kill myself. It's possible that he's hearing it from somebody else. So that's why they're kind of reiterating that, because a lot of behaviors are learned and often you learn it from your parents or if you go to school somewhere at school.
那时有算我有哭吧，就是很后悔，就是没有做好妈妈照顾他们两个哦。看到这里后，我就会更了解我自己，我所做哪里做的不好，也会跟 CPU 倾诉啊。有时候我会打这个 CPU 啦，就是说你和我都有看的那个 video， 在那个 video 里面我哪里有做的不好的，反正 video 就是有开导我。跟着我们的路径走，你有可能有机会带回你的儿子，一直带给我希望啊。
I think people grew an appreciation for the work that child protection officers do. We don't usually get that in our work, mostly because our intervention is not the most welcomed by families. The parents that we work with are just usual people that are in very difficult circumstances, which ties into our belief that there are no bad parents, just parents in very bad circumstances and situations.
And again, that's kind of the same in America, is like we want to often blame or judge the parents, but nowadays we mentioned some could be working 2 or 3 jobs just to keep up with inflation, not have the time to parent and are stressed out. So as social workers, we connect them with the resources they need. So yeah, those are some of the longer videos. They're good too, especially this one up top. But as of right now, I'm kind of sitting on them. I just wanted to finish the PowerPoint for you guys today. Did you want to present today, or did you already present? Okay. You can also film at YouTube Live if that's easier. Okay. And just turn it in and film you presenting your PowerPoint. This is kind of the trail Child Protective Services will go through. And I just jumped a slide, but like if there's a suspected child of abuse or neglect, Usually it's like a teacher or a social worker. So professional or community member reports abuse to CPS. We're mandatory reporters, so social work and teachers and a few others that see kids all day. If we see like signs of abuse, and usually you can tell, all we have to do is report it. We don't have to investigate. It's CPS who then investigates. So social workers go ahead and call 241 kids, make the report. And so then the report is screened in, situation. If it doesn't meet the state's definition of maltreatment, the caller may be referred elsewhere. Maybe it's just like another social work agency that helps with stuff. Now, if safety concerns exist, as this shows, they investigate, or if there's concerns that are moderate, they investigate where they could go. There's no safety concerns, the risk is low, or CPS conducts a family assessment. Maybe it's just like learning how to retrain the family, like the video from China showed us. Now, if they investigate and there's evidence of abuse or neglect that's substantiated or founded, it could go down again where a child has been harmed and the risk of abuse is ongoing and there's safety concerns that are present. Like in that video at the beginning, the mom threatened to throw the kid off the 12th story. And that's kind of scary because, like, in China, they used to have the one-child policy. So if mom and dad are fighting, you might be like, I got your only kid, I hate you, I'm going to kill the kid. That's a safety concern. So there may be a court petition that always happens when I kick that thing. Let's see if it goes back. So there could be a court petition, and it could be filed. Now, if there's not enough evidence, it's unsubstantiated, it's like low risk of future abuse found, the case is closed. If there's a court petition though, the child stays with family, services are provided to the child in the home. Like if they see that it's safe, that they can stay there. Now, if they see that it's not, this is where the child gets placed. So you guys ever heard like, oh, all social workers do is take your kids? And that's kind of the reputation they've gotten, but there is twice as many social workers working to keep the family together as they are. Usually CPS workers, even though they're called social workers, they aren't trained in social work and therapy and get their license. They usually just try to see if they've got enough food, if it's safe, and if it's okay in the home.
My step-grandma, she works for CPS.
Uh-huh. And again, they're just trying to keep the kids safe. Like we have an investment in our future with all of our kids, like a community obligation. And if it is unsafe, it's best to remove the child till, say, the mom or dad gets drug and alcohol treatment or therapy. They learn about domestic violence and how to use maybe nonviolent communication or something of that nature. Then here's reunification of the family. Or if they never get better, they try first to give custody to a relative. So usually they go to like grandma, aunts, uncles, or somebody else. And if that does happen, there's termination of parental rights, adoption or permanent legal guardianship, and then independent living with permanent family connections. So that's kind of the route they go. Hello, how are you? So they kind of follow this tree the whole time with Child Protective Services, and that's one of the videos that shows that. I'm going to zoom back out for the next slides, but really it's just overall need for child safety, and when they reach that, they will try to reunify the family, or if no recovery ever occurs, they could place them with a relative. If no relative wants to take them, they could get placed in a foster home. You guys know any foster experiences that are around your neighborhood, or just what your grandma told you? What's that?
I was a foster child.
Are you, now you don't have to talk about it, but are you open to talking about it at all? Or are you just like, does this make sense when I explain it that way?
Yeah.
Okay. And the overall purpose really is just to make sure that you have the opportunity to grow up and live a life, finish high school, and now you're in college. And it seems like Were you annoyed by the process, or do you think it was semi-helpful in a sense? Right. And that's why I'm saying, yeah, some people do have like, if it is, where there are a lot of social workers involved, I guess, like,
Yeah.
right. But sometimes that's what makes people like want to be a social worker in the first place. Like, I could do this better than the CPS workers did because they weren't that good. You know what I mean? That's why sometimes people are like, I want to be the change I want to see in the world, and hopefully make it better. So these are the family services. So they're services that preserve or strengthen families. Are you still in communication with your brother then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, they were moving in with me now. My parents are about to be here now. They're in the process.
Okay. Are you local, like Dayton or Cincinnati, or are you about 100 miles? Okay. Because I was going to say, we have Lighthouse here, and we do a lot of that, and we were trained. Do you want to be a foster social worker at all? Right. That's often what some people. What kind of social work did you want to do? I almost forget. Oh yeah. Okay. Which high school are you at? I always forget. Okay. Is that on the border, or is that closer to Indianapolis? It is. Okay. So, ultimately, it gives us space to allow the healing and allow the process to be safe. It says to support parents fulfilling parental roles. There are also services that augment family functioning and to supplement parental roles if there's an inadequacy. Like, let's be honest, not all of us learn how to adult quickly. Like, it's hard, and it's hard out there. So if we're not trained, like, I'm a new father. I'm only a year and 6 months into being a father, and it's hard. There's a lot to learn. It takes a lot of patience, and not all of us are a quick study. And now we've got 2 of them on top of that. So we've got a 16-month-old and a 5-month-old. So, and then the premise is families have a right to raise their own children, but also home-based services, family counseling, parent education, and respite care allow you to do that. And also here, children have a right to develop a healthy family environment. So that they're balancing between these 2 things. So if you stay with the family, making sure there's safety. If parents need to learn something, it's okay, and that just shows here children have a right to develop a healthy environment, and then parent aids, homemaker services, daycare or protective services, and income maintenance. Sometimes it is just as simple as income and being able to connect with those services, and how to preserve your income. They do school social work next because that is often intricately related. Like, the referrals come from teachers the majority of the time, or school social workers. So in school social work, they provide support services for children and families in the context of school settings. And then also provide a linkage between school, home, and community. At Lighthouse, we did a lot of school social work, and some examples are like we do the assessments. Sometimes it's special education needs of children or early developmental screening. That's a large area of funding from Help Me Grow. Have you guys ever heard of the Help Me Grow social workers? They often help kids with developmental stuff, learning how to crawl, walk, eat, talk, and just like normal transitions from age 1 month to 1 year to 5 years. Also, support for developmental transitions. Now with teens, or adolescents, they can help with if there's a teen pregnancy, adolescent suicidal ideations or attempted suicide, and then also runaway use. Like at Lighthouse, we did homeless shelter for kids that were 13 to 18, and another homeless shelter for 18 to 24, and then also eating disorders, because that comes up with some of the early teenage diagnosis. So when we diagnose people on our assessments, you might not diagnose schizophrenia in the teenage years, but you will diagnose eating disorders and sometimes alcoholism and addiction. And then the resiliency. So this is where, as I hear some folks tell some of their story, showing resiliency. I finished high school. I was able to get into a college. I was able to make it through the first and second year of college with good grades. And what resiliency looks like is social competence, problem-solving skills. You have autonomy. You're learning how to support yourself and be independent. Also, you have the sense of purpose and future, and then school climate of high expectations and the community support. We always mention across the street, we have the support services at any time. If any students need to call there and leave a message, they will call back. And that's some of the stuff that they do. This may be the story that a lot of folks see with Child Protective Services, is that like it's more of a heartbreaking, challenging issue. So, any questions on those? Are you feeling the burn? We're done next week and go home for Thanksgiving for a week and a half. Probably a lot of stuff due. I'm just guessing. And then also this is another one. I think it's from the same channel that we just watched, but there are a few that were a little bit shorter. Including this one, to know your rights as a CPS. Because sometimes there's an unfounded claim. You could get a claim from somebody who's just a resentful neighbor, and they just say, oh, they let their kids run wild. And like, it wasn't true or substantiated. So I do like this one, if they are calling you, to know what your rights are.
Here, Michigan's Child Protective Services investigate more than 90,000 reports of suspected abuse.
No doubt they save lives, but all too often attorneys say children are taken from innocent parents.
Tonight's 7 Action News reporter Kim Russo shows us why it's so important to know your rights if CPS comes calling.
We want to be clear, this story is not against Child Protective Services or police. People who investigate child abuse dedicate their lives to saving kids, and they do just that. Sometimes there are mistakes. Cost one woman everything. She wants to make sure people know what can happen.
There is no motive compensation. They can never get me what it was.
Julie Ballmer lost almost everything when she tried to do the right thing. When her sister said she couldn't raise her newborn son, Julie took in baby Philip and offered to adopt him. Then when he was 5 weeks old, he suddenly stopped eating.
When the results came back, they said that there was bleeding in the brain.
The doctor at the hospital diagnosed him with shaken baby syndrome. Julie, in her 20s, with few resources, found herself unable to pay a doctor to review that diagnosis at trial. She was sent to prison for 15 years. After almost 5 years in prison, the Innocence Project helped exonerate her. An expert found an MRI that proved little Philip suffered a stroke, not trauma. However, by then, Philip had been permanently adopted. She had no right to see him.
So these are the ugly sides of CPS that you can see. Have you guys ever heard of the Innocence Project before? I'll show you something on them next, because that's another thing social workers get involved with.
I would have no contact. You know, that's a cost that I'm gonna bear for the rest of my life. You know, that's a heartache.
Do I think the system works? No.
Child Protective Services Defense Attorney Sonia Cannon says all parents need to be aware, even the innocent can find themselves under investigation for child abuse.
You better contact an attorney, and you better do it immediately.
It can happen at a hospital with an unexplained illness, or if your child says something that raises a red flag at school.
We don't need a warrant. We're CPS. We don't need a warrant.
This is video posted online by a local mom investigated after her special needs son said at school she didn't feed him, when she says she simply changed his diet. Would you know what to do? She told the CPS worker, and an attorney told her to ask what the allegations were before deciding whether to let her in the house.
The attorney. Don't call these attorneys because they don't know what you're talking about.
Attorney Cannon says this is a big question parents have, and you can see why. She recommends parents ask the allegations and then, based on that information, decide should they call an attorney or let the worker into their home because the home will help prove the allegations are false. After all, while the investigator does need a warrant to force entry, if you don't let them in, they may ask the judge to remove your children pending an investigation.
We were in the state of Michigan. Do you understand what we do?
Yes, I
We can't remove children.
Julie says the devastating lesson she learned is don't let the fact you know you are innocent result in you letting your guard down.
So as a layperson, you put your trust in them, and you don't expect the system to fail. And unfortunately, the system failed, and I just happen to be a victim of that.
Attorneys say if parents do speak to a child abuse investigator, be it a CPS worker or doctor, it is not a bad idea to grab your phone and calmly state that and report the interaction so there are no misunderstandings. A lot is at stake. The state has also provided this pamphlet to help educate parents about this process with the goal of protecting children. We'll have a copy of it at our website, wxyz.com. In the newsroom, Kim Russell, 7 Action News.
Thank you, Kim.
So they probably got a lot of flack from CPS for airing that, but it is important to, in fact, I'm gonna look for the Innocence Project next, because this can be helpful for you guys.
Some people say our trading process feels too easy. They can't believe it's 100% online. It gives them a competitive offer that won't change for 7 days, an offer that they can put toward their new car. Some people can't believe our friendly advocate will come to them and seriously drop off their new ride and whisk their old one away because we make trading your.
It's another thing social workers help out with, and really good that they do. And they start with a quote from Benjamin Franklin. So it's better 100 guilty persons should escape than that one innocent person should suffer. And that's like in our Constitution, it's called the due process of law. So like if someone is investigating, you get what's called due process. So your due process of law is that like you're allowed to argue your case. They can't just come in and take your kids without due process of law.
My name is Khadijah Free. I'm an exonerated Smith, 30 years in prison for a crime I didn't commit. I was locked up for 22 years. Held on 20 years.
I was incarcerated for 36 years for a crime that I didn't commit.
Spent half of my life basically in there from the age of 28. The biggest like 25 years of my life.
I'm 35 years old and I just got exonerated after 16 years of wrongful conviction.
I was 16 at the time I was arrested.
I was incarcerated 24 years. I didn't believe that I'd ever get out. I kind of lost faith.
When it comes to prison, you don't ask how to get station. You just have to. You just have to. You have to keep it. So,
I thought that I was going to die in prison. And I'm so happy that I was not.
The Innocence Project started in 1992 out of a law clinic at Cardozo Law School.
People never considered prior to our work just how frequently innocent people can be wrongly convicted. Barry and I were both working as public defenders in the South Bronx, New York City, and a colleague of ours, after we left, had been involved in a robbery case, a rape case, where his client had more than a dozen alibi witnesses.
The 17 alibi witnesses, Marion had been picked out in a photo array by the people armed in this crime. And that was enough, even though he had 17 eyewitnesses.
Barry and Peter had heard of a new and more accurate technique of testing biological material, DNA.
No one had ever done DNA testing here in a criminal case. And we tried to do DNA testing, but the rape could have been destroyed. And we did other testing, which eventually proved that that man was innocent. But it got us involved with DNA. And we said, wow, there's extraordinary potential here. For all these cases where people were tried before they had DNA, maybe we could test the hypothesis of innocence and prove that many people were in fact innocent.
I
have to say that at that time, the idea that there were innocent people being arrested and prosecuted and sentenced to jail was really not commonly held. Quite the contrary. Most people in the criminal legal system thought it was a crazy idea, a radical idea. So I first had the privilege of working with the Innocence Project when I joined the Federal Defender's Office in Philadelphia. I was in their capital habeas corpus unit, which meant that I was representing people who were sentenced to death in Pennsylvania. Nick Yaris was actually the very first case I handled, and it turned out that Nick, from the very first time I met him, from the very first time anyone at our office met him, was adamant and unrelenting in his view and his assertion that he was not only innocent of the crime for which he had been convicted and condemned to death, but that he wanted DNA testing and was really just demanding DNA testing. And so the first phone call I made was the Innocence Project. And the Innocence Project worked with me for the entire 7 years that I represented Nick on the DNA. They guided every turn. And because of that instruction, Nick became the first death sentence prisoner in Pennsylvania to be exonerated by DNA evidence. Had they not stepped in and provided us the expert guidance and advice that they did, it is entirely possible that Nick Yaris could have been executed, notwithstanding the fact that he was absolutely and unquestionably innocent.
Nobody wants to admit they put someone in prison falsely. No prosecutor, no police investigator, no judge. So it's vitally important that some independent body be monitoring what the judicial system does. The Innocence Project has exposed reliability problems with evidence such as bite marks, ballistics, blood splatter, and even some fingerprints and eyewitness identification that still results in convicting people regardless of the method's reliability.
One of the most important things that the Innocence Project has done is shine a light on the very real and prevalent problem of junk science in courtrooms. Many of us from a young age have been conditioned to believe that if somebody with scientific credentials comes into a courtroom and testifies as an expert, then what they're telling us must surely be reliable. Things like hair analysis, fingerprint analysis, even bite mark analysis. What we've learned in large measure through the work of the Innocence Project is how many of these techniques are pure junk science.
This lack of standards for evidence had devastating consequences for Marvin Anderson.
And it was my first time I've been incarcerated, locked up for anything.
At the age of 18, Anderson was convicted of rape based on faulty eyewitness testimony. The victim had been shown a set of mugshots, all photos in black and white, with the exception of Marvin's, which was in color.
Marvin Anderson was falsely accused of rape in Virginia. He served 15 years before he was ultimately exonerated by the Innocence Project using DNA evidence.
When my case happened, all they saw was that, black man raped white woman, sentenced to 210 years in prison. That's all they knew about. But on the day that I was exonerated, the news media was there, but it was a chance for me to prove to society once again that I was telling the truth from the very beginning, that I did not commit the crime. So the verdict joyful from not only for me, but for my mother and my family, and all the people that had supported me and stood behind me during my time I was incarcerated.
It's amazing what he's managed to do with his life after this horrific tragedy that I think would destroy most people. He's actually followed his childhood dream, not only to be a firefighter, he's actually the chief of the fire department in the town where he lives in Virginia, and he's a member of the board of the Innocence Project. To be able to leave the bitterness and the resentment that he must surely feel behind and turn and make his life something that he had dreamed of is inspiring, and it hopefully encourages the rest of us to realize that we must not rest until everybody who has been falsely convicted has been identified, exonerated, and released from prison.
The Innocence Project has helped more than 230 wrongly convicted people secure their freedom.
I spent about 25 years in prison for a murder I didn't commit. And the Innocence Project gave me my freedom. They gave me my life back. I was an average guy, making average money in an average job in an average neighborhood. When I lived in the suburbs, I didn't have any criminal record. The the worst thing I'd ever done was a speeding ticket. And so if it could happen to me, there's no reason it couldn't happen to you. That's why this project is important.
During the prosecution, prosecutors withheld a number of pieces of what would have been exculpatory evidence. They literally hid evidence that would have exculpated Michael Morton from this crime that he never committed.
After many years of being denied access to evidence or an opportunity to do the DNA test, we eventually were able to demonstrate that Michael was wrongly convicted of killing his wife. That was an example of prosecutorial misconduct. Because if the prosecutor, Ken Anderson in that case, had revealed exculpatory evidence that was in his file, Michael Morton never would have been convicted.
After he was exonerated, Michael worked with the Innocence Project to make policy changes that would prevent what happened to him from happening to others.
Michael was able to work with a right-left coalition in Texas, and we passed the Michael Morton Act, which revolutionized the whole criminal justice system in the state.
The Innocence Project pushes hard not only to exonerate innocent people, pushes hard in order to ensure that the people responsible for those tragedies receive an appropriate level of accountability.
You know, when we talked to Milton Friedman originally about creating the Friedman Prize, we talked about what kind of person would get it. Could be a great scholar, could be a political leader, could be specifically the man who stood in front of the tank at Tiananmen Square. The Innocence Project takes on individual clients who have wrongly been punished by the power of the state. So it's kind of like the man standing in front of the tank, trying to defy this system that is very difficult to turn around once it's.
Have you guys ever heard of that picture? It happened in the 80s. So China is a well-known communist government and kind of oppressive, and you could only have one kid for a while, and they beat people down. But it's called Tiananmen Square, and they were kind of taking over, and this one dude just stood in front of the tank and like stopped them all.
Made its decision.
As a liberty lover, what could be worse than someone's freedom being taken away, for them to be locked up unjustly? And when I think of the Innocence Project, what could be better than restoring those lives? I think there's a wonderful symmetry between people we've honored with previous Friedman Prizes, people who are risking their lives to fight for liberty, and honoring the Innocence Project, who restores lives, gives people back their life, their liberty.
Milton Friedman's concern for liberty applies just as much to the United States as it does to the rest of the world. Notions of civil liberties and civil rights and freedom know no national borders. We started with one project here in New York City. As of now, we have 55 projects in the National Innocence Network throughout the United States, and we have more than 24 projects throughout the world. So the problems of wrongful conviction, the failure of people to follow the rule of law are international problems, not localized to any particular form of government or any particular country.
Freedom is not a state. Freedom is an act. And to have allies like Cato, who are dedicated to protecting freedom, to making sure that people get fair trials, that we have good science, these are extraordinarily important goals.
Freedom means a lot.
Freedom means everything. Without freedom, you've got nothing.
Freedom is the totality of life. It's the sum of everything good.
Freedom to me, I like to say, it's a new life. It's like being reborn. It's like given a chance to live a life I had been denied. Enjoy life, go when I want to, come when I want to. Walk down the street, go to the store, do this interview.
I can go to the grocery store, I can pay my bills, I can drive a car, I can take a bath.
I love just being free, not under somebody's control.
What the Innocence Project has done is it has underscored the importance of reviving the founder's vision of a fair and just criminal justice system, a system that actually earns the name justice.
30 years from now, when we're looking back on the impact of the Innocence Project, we're going to see, because of the work of the Innocence Project, the American criminal justice system is truly a criminal justice system and not just a criminal legal system.
And then this guy, have you guys ever heard of Milton Friedman? He's another big advocate for, again, that due process of law and the Constitution and freedom. It's interesting, his name is Friedman, but he has a lot of stuff on economic principles too that allow us to empower ourselves to truly be free and not affected by inflation and totalitarianism. And there's a lot of stuff on Innocence Project. This is just one video, but there's a lot. In fact, University of Cincinnati has a really good video. I wish it popped up first on what social workers and lawyers do together just about 60 miles south of here with this Innocence Project. And if you do your Master's of Social Work at UC, you can also combine it with a Juris Doctorate in the law. So it's a combined program. You get an MSW and a law degree in about 4.5 years. So it's kind of a good deal. That's probably the one that I was seeing. So this is a lot of the folks at UC, but I'll stop it here as I know I want to give you guys
23 years for a wrongful conviction. I did 29.
That's not the same video, is it? I feel like it's a different one. I don't think we saw that guy. Okay. Any questions about anything? We can look at this one next time, but I just want to make sure we are done now with chapter 13. We're moving into chapter 14. And the Innocence Project came up because of that mom who was wrongfully accused of shaken baby syndrome. Have you guys ever heard of that before too? Basically, it's like new parents and why they put billboards everywhere, never shake a baby. Like if the baby's crying and they don't know what to do and they're tired and they want it to stop, sometimes they'll go like this and that can actually kill a baby. And it's just, again, out of innocence or frustration. But they accused that mom and she got 15 years in prison for it. So through the Innocence Project, they were able to prove that it was actually just a stroke or a seizure and not the mom's physical abuse that caused a brain bleed on the baby. So sometimes you do need the justice system to truly be, like they said, a criminal justice system, not just a criminal system where you're like thrown right into prison without defense of yourself. So this one is good. I'll show it next time, but you got to remind me. It is about UC. So here's where UC has their program and the ability to donate. But UC has that combined. A lot of schools do this now. You combine a law degree and a social work master's. And some people say that's like the peak. You get all of that to be able to help people out and support the Innocence Project. So, but that's all I have for today. Any questions on anything? It's crazy. There's only like 2 weeks till Thanksgiving. And then we'll jump right into finals. So we do. It's already up for you. So it's just a self-assessment essay with all those questions on. And so I already have it up if you wanted to start early.
Like it's an essay or
it is a self-assessment essay. And it's just, you would answer every question about it. It's like taking a reflection and time to. It's 2 pages of questions, and if you answered them all, you could cover 3 to 6 if you like cite stuff or do stuff from the book, but just really considering why we do social work. Ideally, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to kill you on it, but you do want to learn that before you graduate so that like you get into graduate school and they hook you guys up. Like that is all social workers use as APA. And it's only because APA paid the most to advocate. So here's the final. And you could just like paste those questions one by one into a paper and think about them and take your 10 days on break to think about them and about the self-examination. Because sometimes, yeah, it helps to know why we became a social worker, and then here's the question. So you can just like paste them one by one. I don't know why they all say number one, but it's just those questions. And so the first part is who you are as a person, and the second part is who you are as a professional. So like when you finish. And I know not everyone in this class is becoming a social worker, but you can just change it to what's appropriate for if you want to do something else. Like, no, I want a social work degree, but I want to go to law school too. And that's okay. So just change it as you need.
So you want us to restate the question and answer them?
You can, or you could just straight up answer it in paragraph form. Just to like cover it, and it should cover everything. And you could even cite the book or the PowerPoints or whatever you need, or the videos even, like I want to work as the part of the Innocence Project when I graduate, or yeah, it's just a good self-assessment overall. I got a PO that wants to call me about a client now too. As social workers, the work is never ending, but if you keep on top of it, it's good training in this class. It seems like so many papers, but if you do them as they come, you should be good. I've also opened them up. If you have to catch up on anything, you're allowed to. So we'll watch this one next time. This is actually a really good video. This one like almost makes you cry. So get ready for it next time. It's a good one. And they're local people. So they're like dudes that are from Cincinnati area. They're like, dang. Because it happens, you know what I mean? Like people do messed up stuff and then get convicted. And it's like, actually, let's look at the evidence again. Hope that it's not all bad. Somehow I think I'm live streaming twice. Because it wasn't open.